spoke at a little black book lunch. What's it called? Ladies lunch. And Shannon was there, and I don't know if Shannon feels the same way, but I felt like this lady's information was mind-blowing to me. And so I asked Danette if she would come and speak. I think it will be worth our while. It is 9:42. I would like 10 minutes at the end just to finish up. So
I will do my best, but
10:20.
just give me a signal and I will quit talking. Well, hello.
Hello.
Welcome. How do you guys start? I have to learn this. It says, hello NTI, is that how you start?
Yes.
All right. So let me start by saying this. Most of the time when people think of a business owner, they think that they're wealthy, that they're super successful, that they call all the shots, that everybody works for them. But the reality is most of the time it's the exact opposite. They work a ton of hours. Everybody else seems to get paid before they do. Things don't always go exactly the way they want. So the other thing that makes it even worse is that, and you guys have probably heard this statistic before, but it's like 80 to 85% of businesses that start fail outright in the first 5 years. And that's absolutely terrible. It's heart-wrenching for me because I think of all the effort and the passion and the hard work and the money and investment that goes into it, and then it fails. And so it makes you wonder, why in the world do people dream about owning their own business? And the answer to that, one, is they don't know what they don't know, right? So they don't know a lot of times they don't even know there's an 85% failure rate. And they don't know what causes the failure, and they certainly don't believe that they're gonna do those things that cause the failure. And the other thing is that they don't realize that there is a formula for business growth and business success, and that they need to apply the formula and use it in their business. The problem is most of the time, business owners, when they start their business, they're very, very good at what their business does. That's what they excel at, so they start their business around it. But they don't realize there's this system, and that's why they struggle. I have seen this firsthand. I'm gonna give you guys a little background on me, but my name is Danette Grau Kohrs. I am the founder and managing partner of Trinity Strategic Growth Solutions. I am the co-developer of the Build It to Grow program, and I am a growthologist, which basically means that I'm passionate about studying the science behind business growth. And the thing that I'm most proud of is that I'm a third-generation entrepreneur. So, my grandparents owned a bakery on Chippewa down in South City. And I've got a fun picture here. I'm gonna come back to that. I'll come back to that. There we go. Oops. In the 50s. So we just found this picture not too long ago in our family photos. So I just thought it was really cool. So I want to share that with you. And then my parents owned a bakery in Warson Woods. So this is a snapshot they took when my parents opened that bakery. And in case you guys want to know, I'm the short little one in the back, in the middle. And then just to give you guys a time stamp of what's going on here, my little sisters up front have their Cabbage Patch Downs. So I'll let you figure out what's going on there. I'm going to go back here to this real quick. If you guys like, you can get the slides for this presentation. If you just fax or text BI2G to that text number right there, it will email it to you. It's going to prompt you for your email address, so just put in your first name, last name, email in that order with a space. It will email the PDF to you, and it's in a form template, so you can actually, if you've got a smart device right in front of you, you can type notes right into the PDF. So it's 314-300-0378. All right, so I'm going to zip forward here, and I'm going to jump right in. Let's look at what an ideal business looks like. I am blocking you, I'm so sorry. All right, so it grows easily, which basically means things are going smoothly, it's consistent, everything seems to kind of happen effortlessly, not everything is a big chore. There's very few cash flow problems. Now sometimes there's some that are very specific for maybe a specific investment reason, but most of the time there's enough money coming in to pay existing bills, and there's a reserve in place that allows some ebb and flow in expenses and revenues. Everything's smooth in operation, which means there's not a ton of fires, right? A lot of times entrepreneurs are running around with their hair on fire, trying to put out HR issues, trying to figure out how to make payroll this month, all of those sorts of things going on. But that doesn't happen in an ideal business, and it's controllable. And what that means basically is that you can grow it at a rate that you want it to grow, that you can handle capacity and operation-wise, as well as you can slow it down. So let's say you have some issues with operation lines or maybe staff, you can slow things down. You have control over that. Some of those other variables, there it is, I'm missing a slide. That's why. Okay, that makes a lot of sense. So that's right. So that's okay because we're short on time, so I'll just skip the other 4 points. So here's the brutal truth. 85%, as I mentioned before, of businesses die. They just don't make it. Now there's another 10% that survive. Now what does survive mean? That basically means they're kind of status quo. They're making enough money to pay the bills. The owner's making a comfortable income most of the time. Maybe sometimes they have some dips in income, but other times they're doing better. But basically they're keeping their head above water. In that situation though, most often than not, the owner themselves is the hub of all operations. So everything has to go through them. And that's what I was talking about before. It's like nothing gets done unless the owner is the one doing it. Well, that's what in that survive situation. So if you're doing the math, what's left is this thrive. It's about 5%. So all companies that start, only about 4 to 5% make it to this thrive, where they basically have all of those things where the businesses are providing personal wealth, they're providing personal freedom. They're giving you all of these things that people dream of, and that's why they want to start a business, because that business does provide those things. But you got to follow that formula. So what's the difference? What makes some businesses successful and others? And it really comes down to whether or not that business owner is what I call a growth-oriented leader, where they are really looking at vision and long-term, or are they stuck in the operations of the day-to-day? Are they doing and have to be there to make everything happen? Because they're not fulfilling that role of the leader who's looking at and making sure everything all kind of works together. And they have to be in that role because no one else can be. You can't outsource that. You can't hire somebody to be your visionary. Now, if you're a large corporation, maybe you hire a CEO to do that, but that's a whole different level than a small business owner. So here's the thing, there's 2 steps to it. You gotta know, remember we talked about you don't know what you don't know. You gotta know what to do and what the difference is and what's different between thriving businesses and surviving, or worse, dying businesses. And then the second part is you gotta take action. You gotta do something with that knowledge, right? Now, why aren't more successful? Well, you would think that's an easy formula. You just learn what you need to know and then you do it, right? But it doesn't happen, and here's why. You haven't learned how, businesses haven't learned how, but there's 2 ways to do it. Trial and error, and then learn from someone else. Those are the only 2 ways you can learn anything, right? Now let me ask you guys, which way do you think entrepreneurs learn things that they don't know?
Trial and error.
Yep, absolutely. And that's because mostly it's in their DNA. They're hard workers, they're smart people, they can get in, they can figure stuff out, they make it happen. And trial and error is the best way to learn anything, by far.
Is it also the most
It's also the most expensive and the most painful, most of the time.
I think I can vouch for that, actually.
What's
I would
that?
argue teaching it.
Am I teaching it?
No, I would argue that teaching it, you would learn a lot more.
Right. That's the next level, right? You learn it and then you turn around and teach it,
Yeah.
and it ingrains it even more.
Right.
Absolutely. But trial and error is expensive not only from a cash flow perspective, but also a lost opportunity. So you're trying things that didn't work while you weren't trying things that did work. So it becomes very, very expensive. So the other option then is to learn from someone else. That's why mentors are so powerful. Everybody tells you to get a mentor.
Yes.
That's that right there, learning from someone else. But you can get mentors in every aspect of your life, right? All right, so those are your 2 options. Now, here's some of the problems. First of all, we have this thing called information overload. So it's worse today than ever before because we have this thing called the internet, which I absolutely love the internet because I love to learn. But you can never get to the end of the internet. It just keeps giving you more and more and more information. When you've got a billion different options, you've got podcasts, you have vlogs, you have webinars, you have books, you have audio programs, and so you just keep learning and learning and learning. So without the application of it, or understanding what's relevant, what's applicable to you in your current situation, you don't really know what to do with it. Sometimes it's very encouraging, it gets you really fired up, but there's that second part, which is taking action, which you don't necessarily do because you don't know what to do with it. Or if you try to do something with it, it may not be the right thing, because we talked about that, and you may just be spinning your wheels, right? There's also this thing called failure to implement, which means you learn everything and you don't do anything with it. So you bring all these binders back from a seminar that you go to, and maybe binders date me a little bit because those are paper and stuff, right? Not a PDF format or something like that. But you bring all of this information back and it sits up on a shelf and you think, okay, I'm gonna get to that next weekend, or this Saturday I'm gonna take the day off and just focus on applying some of that stuff, and it just never happens. You don't know how to apply it, other fires come up, all of these sorts of things. So that holds us back as well. So the Build It to Grow program was designed with that in mind. It was to take all of this information out there and really kind of boil it down to what's relevant for what situation and put it into a step-by-step process, because really there is a very leveraged approach to what you work on first to get the best results down the road, instead of putting the cart before the horse, so to speak. Then putting it in that step-by-step, and then adding in an accountability factor to overcome that failure to implement and kind of that stalling out thing. Because entrepreneurs are by themselves. Even if you're not a solopreneur, I need to get a glass of water too, because I'm getting really hot mouth here. Thank you. They're very much on their own. They're kind of at the top, right? And they don't have a lot of people to confide in or to trust or to talk strategy with. Because you've got your competitors maybe, but you wouldn't necessarily feel comfortable doing that. Thank you, Brenda, I appreciate that. You don't necessarily feel comfortable talking to your competitors, but they know your industry inside and out, right? And then somebody who's outside of your industry may not know what's going on in yours. So, thank you. In the Build It to Grow program, we have peers, growth-oriented entrepreneur peer groups. They may be in your industry, they may not, but they're all focused on growth and all studying the same material. So when you have like experiences with someone, you can very much support each other much better. All right, so what does it take to build a business that's successful? And so the first big insight is to build it to be saleable. So I spent about 10 years working with a local merger and acquisition firm, and I started to learn and study this. And the reason I worked with them was because I knew how to build a company organically, but I knew you could also grow a company through acquisition. But I also knew from my entrepreneurial background and my family that some businesses sell for millions of dollars when an owner retires, and some just close their doors, lock them, and walk away with nothing. What is the difference? Why can some of them be sitting on this big golden egg, and other ones have absolutely nothing and walk away? And I learned that working with a merger and acquisition firm. We worked with middle market companies, and I saw some of that. Now, what I kind of skipped over earlier, but I think it's important to come back to, is I told you about my entrepreneur family, third generation, that sort of stuff. So when I got out of high school, I went to college, I got my degree in business with a focus in marketing and advertising, and then I started Trinity in '99, and I invested in a couple of franchises over the next couple of decades doing that. So I started to look at all these patterns and all of these systems. And in that franchise, in my experience owning franchises, which are nothing more than, and I'm going to talk about franchises in a second, nothing more than a system in a box. But the reason franchises are so successful is because they've become systematized. And I know you do systems, so that's why you're just over there. Yes. And they sell you that, and it's valuable, and that's what you're paying for. And you have to follow their system. If you don't, they will take your franchise away from you, and they won't give you a refund. Okay? They will just take it away from you, because that's how important their systems are to their success. That's part of what you sign when you give them all your money. So it's very, very important. So I looked at all of that in my merger and acquisition and my entrepreneurial years of what makes businesses successful and struggle in small businesses, and put it all into this system. So we're going to build it to be saleable. That's the first thing that's very, very important, because what makes a company saleable is also what makes it profitable. It's what makes it valuable. It's what makes it grow consistently. All of those things are identical. So you have to start with, I talked about before, your vision. Beginning with the end in mind. Now I kind of like this graphic because it's a marathon, right? It doesn't happen overnight. It's not something where you go to one webinar or one seminar and you get your binders and you go back and you say, okay, I gotta do 3 or 4 things. You do 3 or 4 things, and then you do 3 or 4 more things, and they build on each other, right? And then you go back and you continue to polish and perfect You're never done, but you get better and better and better. So you gotta begin with the end in mind, and that starts by thinking like an investor. Not a business, not a job. So if you want this business that grows and excels and exponentially grows, you have to think like an investor does, all right? So it's not about salary, it's not about revenues, it's about profit, net profit, not even just gross profit, it's net profit. So that's the first thing you have to think about. So when you're looking at the end in mind, those are some of the things. You're like, you have to look at what your metrics are now and then say, where do I want them to be? And you set your first level goals and then you take them to the next and next and next. So we talked about profit, and then you build it for the vision versus just running it day to day. And we talked about that before. Those businesses that struggle tend to be just running operations instead of looking at the big vision and building it to be something. All right, so businesses that sell, that private equity groups come in and gobble up, or maybe other corporations, are scalable, which basically means that you can deliver 2 widgets just as easily as you can deliver 200 widgets. I just hate that I'm standing right in front of you, I'm so sorry. Just as easily, without big implosions of operations going on, without a lot of issues and problems coming up, that you've got systems and processes in place so that you can scale. It also means your profit is predictable. You can see the trends, you know what's gonna happen. You know if you sell X, you're gonna have this much money in the bank. All right, you know if you get this many orders or if you talk to this many people, this is what's gonna happen in 6 months. It's all about predictability. And then autonomous is very, very important too, which means not only that the business can run without you, the owner, but it also means that it can run without any one individual, all right? So let's say I've been running my company for 20 years, now my daughter's just graduated from college, and so I'm like, oh, wonderful, sweetie, right? You come in, you take over, I'm gonna train you on everything that I've been doing. Now I can go on an extended vacation with my husband. Awesome, I've been waiting 20 years to do this. But what happens if she's like, Mom, I can't stand working with you, I'm out of here. Or something happens to her and she can't run the business anymore. Now I'm back to square one, right? So it has to be designed so that you may not be able to replace yourself or someone else overnight, but relatively easily you can transition in someone else to do that same role. You have to design or build a company to do that. The second big thing is to build it to grow, all right? So this is where we start talking about franchises. And that's where systems come into play so much, all right? Because that's how it grows, is by systematizing, breaking everything down into step-by-step processes that can be easily duplicated every single time, all right? Where do you guys think that business owners tend to keep their systems most of the time?
In their hands.
That's all right up here, which is scary because we get so much information overload, right, that we even forget our own systems sometimes, and we run in circles and do things over and over again. But what's worse is that if something happens to you, even if you could have sold that business, because maybe it has some things going well for it, once you're gone or sick, and these stories are all over the place in the merger and acquisition world, that business's value can drop overnight. You have one little heart attack and you're out for a month, that business value can go from X to negative X, like that, which is really sad and really scary. So you've got to get those systems in place, not only for yourself, which let me tell you guys from my own personal experience, when I develop systems for my business and get them on paper, even though I'm still running them in the process of getting ready to transition them, which is how you start it, that's how you hand things off, it takes so much stress off, and it's so much more efficient because you don't have to think about, did I do that? Double check your own work, you just go through the checklist. So one of the franchises that we bought, every day our managers went through checklists and had to check off everything. And sometimes they buck the system. They're like, I know what I'm doing, I have to do a checklist. But also, managers can come back and see what was done, what was missed, and all that kind of stuff. And it just makes things so much faster and so much more efficient. All right, now, Ray Kroc kind of took the franchise concept 60 years ago and made it what it is today with McDonald's, right? But let me stop for just a second and say that franchising your business doesn't mean you go out and sell franchises, okay? Franchising isn't a type of business, although that's what we all think it is. It's a mode of operation. It's a way to run your business. So everyone should be thinking about franchising their business, even if you never intend to sell a franchise ever, because that's how you're gonna make it saleable, and that's how you're gonna make it growable. Is growable a word?
Yeah,
it is.
I like to make it.
SEO chapter
So it's a method of operation, we talked about that. It's functional. So what that means is that no longer do you just say, hey, this is your title, go do it. It really looks at the function. We're gonna talk about the 8 functions of a business here shortly, but it says, here's the function that needs to be accomplished, and you're responsible for this function. And you can give them any fancy title you want for that, but your responsibility is this function and making that happen. It's documented, not in the head, and not verbal. The problem with verbal is that you can't leverage that unless you're recording it. And then, this is what I already tapped on, every business should try to franchise itself. No matter how small you are, especially if you're a solopreneur, you should be writing up systems. Don't think, well, I'll do that once I get staff, because guess what? As soon as you bring in that assistant for the first time, you can just give them your, what I call cheat sheets, and let them work from that. Now, they won't be perfect because your brain interprets it a little different, but it will be worlds ahead of sitting there at the computer with them and trying to explain everything, and they're desperately trying to understand what you're trying to tell them, right? So document it, and then you can hand it off. So why franchise? Well, it dramatically increases the value of your business. It's so much easier to scale and grow. Labor costs are reduced because of the training, and you have turnover. The next person that comes in can pick it up and run with it much quicker than if you're verbally telling them over and over. Plus, your time is free. I mean, your time is so valuable as a business owner, the last thing you should be doing is sitting there teaching them the next person, the same thing over and over and over again. It's like downloading your brain onto a piece of paper instead of making you the central place that everybody has to come to get that information. It reduces operational dependency on any one person. We talked about the autonomy thing, but this also kind of taps on something that I like to call the hostage syndrome. Does anybody have any idea what that might be? Yes?
Oh, been there.
Which is?
Where someone feels like they are indispensable and they want more money, more time off, more whatever it is to stay with you.
And they act up, or they start to break the rules and like, go ahead, fire me, whatever.
Pitch up every 4 weeks for a raise, or they'll leave.
Last but not least, since they drum up troops.
They drum up troops.
Oh,
like turn everybody against you. Yep. And they think they're leading. So that's the last place you want to be. So if you have all of these systems and processes in place and you've become autonomous, it may be painful to let that person go because they may be very good at what they do and they may be very valuable to your company, but they're not valuable if they're turning everybody against your vision and you, and they're not valuable if they're constantly breaking rules, setting bad examples, asking for more money. And I shared a story the last time I did this presentation, but I met with a nonprofit and they had a superstar come in that raised like $300,000 for them. But then somebody came in and told her she was worth a lot more. And so she approached them for more money and they couldn't. They're a nonprofit. They did give her a raise because they wanted to keep her, but she was disgruntled at that point and she left. And now they're afraid because a lot of what she brought in were personal relationships, they're gonna lose this whole donor base that she built. Instead of having a system to give to their fundraiser to say, go out and this is how you raise stuff, and when she walks, they bring the next person in, they brought her in, she built a system of which they are oblivious to, and it's all dependent upon her, she leaves, and now they're left hanging. See the difference there? All right. The 80% success rate versus the 80% failure rate. One of the reasons I love franchises, and you guys may not have heard this statistic, but franchises have an 80% success rate. And you remember, businesses that are privately owned and started independently owned have an 80% failure rate, so it really reverses it. And that's why I was so passionate about bringing all of this information, putting it into a business growth program to share with entrepreneurs, because I realized that if they knew this, they all needed to know it if they hadn't figured it out already on their own. Because if they knew it, there wouldn't have to be that failure rate. It could start to reverse. And they wouldn't have to have so much blood, sweat, and tears lost. All right, and when you got that franchise, it's easier to hire, it's easier to train and develop your team, as we talked about, and easier to sell. Because I can tell you, when a buyer, an investor comes in, if you're the heart of the business, they will walk unless they want to buy a job. And most investors do not want to buy a job, they want to buy a cash flow, which is what we talked about before. Businesses have to have a positive cash flow. So it's very hard to sell a job. It can be done, but it's not as easy to do. And you don't get the high multiples, which is X times what maybe your revenues are, or maybe your net profit, which is what they look at when they set value for your company. All right, how are we doing on time?
You have 13 minutes.
I have 13 minutes, okay. So here's what we need to do. We need to get focused. right? So here's the build it to grow niche builder triad. You need to have a unique customer focus, which basically means, I'm gonna zip right through this. You gotta know what you do really, really well and who is perfect for you, and that's who you go after. Then you have to have a compelling sales message that articulates that really, really well and really talks to what those ideal guys really want and need and how you do it securely. And then you use attraction tactics that are strategic, not just go out and try lots of different things, but you really look at it all strategy and say, where are these guys at and what can I say to them at the right time, the right place, so you don't have to do a ton of attraction and yet you still get it. And right there in the middle, that's your sweet spot, obviously, where you really can thrive. All right, so there's 8 business functions in every business. 4 of them sustain growth, those 4 right there, and then 4 of them are what we call the growth engine. All right, those are what drive growth, those 4 right there, which is attraction, conversion, fulfillment, and then customer development. Fulfillment is what I would coin doing what you do. So almost all small business owners are really good at doing what they do, and they start their business around fulfillment. But there's 7 other functions that have to be done correctly. That's why it's so hard, and that's why the failure rate's so high. So you don't have to be experts in all those 7 other areas. You just gotta know what you gotta know, what you don't know about those 7 things so that you can either outsource it or make sure it's getting done properly. Does it make sense? All right, so it's like an engine. Why do I call it an engine? Well, when you have an engine, you have all these different components that each have to work, but they also have to work together in order to kind of move things forward, right? And if any one piece breaks, unfortunately, because I've got 2.5 teenage drivers right now, I say half because one's got his permit, so I'm driving around at night. That's always fun. But if one part breaks, then you got to fix the whole car, right? You can't just say, well, you can for a short period of time just ignore it, but what happens? It gets worse, right? So you got to fix it, and you've got all of these things that all work together. Your dashboard is your metrics, so we're going to talk about that. Metrics are very important in business. So fuel, I'm going to start with fuel. That's the first thing. That's what we just looked at, that triad. It's your unique customer focus, your sales message, and your strategic attraction strategy. Every single business has its own unique field. Even if you guys, there's like 3 insurance people in here, you all are a little unique. You all do things a little differently. You all have a unique person that you can work with that really, really is perfect for you and you're perfect for them. So if you sit down and you really look at it, that's what you get in your fuel. So your fuel then feeds into your growth engine. And this is kind of the heart of the Build It to Grow program. We start with sustaining, all those 4 sustaining modules or functions, because if you can't sustain the growth, you don't want to grow before you can sustain, because you implode. And that's where I see a lot of businesses fail. They try to grow, they want to grow, they need more revenues, they need more customers, but they're not ready for it, and they actually die off faster by doing that. I say they dig their grave faster, and it's sad because they're not ready. But once you get here, and this is the sexy part, everybody wants to drive growth, nobody wants to do the sustaining part, but that's important to do first. But once you get there, the fuel goes into your attraction, and then you convert, right? Once you got a lead, you know they're not a customer just because you have a lead, but then you got to close them, and there's 2 parts to that. One is that nurturing process, that relationship development, and the second one is the sales process. Once they've shown interest, then you take them through that process. They either buy or they don't. If they don't, they go back into the nurturing process. If you're smart, if you're leveraging that function, right? And then if they actually do sell, they go to fulfillment. Now you deliver what you've promised. You got to deliver it at the right time. You got to deliver it the way you said you would, when you said you would, at the price you said you would. That all sounds like common sense, but so many times businesses screw one or all of those things up more than you guys would ever imagine. I'm hypersensitive to it, so I see it all the time. This is also what we call a closed loop conversion, which means once you have a lead, don't lose it, because over time they will probably close. So if 4 out of 100 leads are ready to buy right now, why throw 96 away? Right. Develop this system, and then you don't have to generate 96 more leads for the next 4 sales, right? Versus going out there and generating 100 leads over and over and over again just to keep getting 4 more sales. It's a lot of work, and it's very expensive. All right, oops, so you fulfill, you get a little pot of gold. It's a little because there's some costs not only in delivering, but also in attracting and converting, right? But you also want to make sure that you have a wow experience. I think I heard somebody kind of talking about that earlier today. It's so important when you deliver what you do that your customer experience is top priority, and that is the heart of everything in our Build It to Grow program. It's all about that wow. It's all about the customer experience and making sure that that is superior. And then development, customer development. So just because they sold once doesn't mean you just move on. So so many times. Always looking for the next customer. Get more wallet share is what they call it, right? Upsell, cross-sell, find more opportunities. Make sure they come back. They don't come in the front door and then go out the back door screaming. You certainly don't want that. And then you get a bigger pot of gold because you don't have to absorb attraction costs. You might have a little bit of conversion costs, but not near like you had the first time. So you get more and more profit. That's where the exponential profit comes in, is through the customer development function. All right, and then referrals come out of that. If you've done it well, if you've fulfilled well, and they've come back, they'll give you referrals, and referrals are always easier to sell for two reasons. One, they're on the far right side of the sales cycle, so they're ready to buy right now. That's why they're asking for names of someone that can do what they do. And secondly, they've been endorsed by someone, so their confidence level is a lot higher, so they do a lot less research, and they're more likely to go with you versus you just being a blind name. So referrals are awesome, right? You guys know that. That's why you're in groups like this. All right, so that is the business growth engine. That's kind of the heart of the Build It to Grow program, and I have flown through it. I could talk on that like for 8 hours alone, but anyway. And then the dashboard is where your metrics are. So every single one of these functions have metrics, and you got to know, where are you right now, today, and where are we going to go? Are you going backwards or are you going forward? You don't know if you're not looking at metrics. It's like flying an airplane and taking it straight to the side of the mountain because you're not looking at altitude. And I won't even pretend I know about flying, but you know, I know there's altitude, and I know you don't want to hit the side of the mountain. And I know John F. Kennedy Jr. got his metrics and his plane all jacked up, and that's why his plane went down. So you need those. Now, here's the conventional wisdom, or the counterintuitive wisdom. Everybody starts with attraction, they convert, they fulfill, develop. Chronologically, that's the way it happens. But if you want to leverage this whole functionality, you start with your metrics, you figure out where you're at, what you're doing well, where's your weakest link, all right? And then you're going to fix that. Because you've got a big hole in conversion. Why attract more? Because you're not converting properly, right? So you start with your metrics, then we look at fulfillment. I told you how that's the heart. You got to make sure that's done well. Because why attract someone, convert them, and then piss them off, right? So that they go out in the marketplace and say, don't ever do business with them again. And then they go and tell everybody else, or they yell it, and then all of a sudden it's what I call anti-advertising, which is the last thing you want. So you got to make sure that one is awesome. Then develop them so you get the bigger pot of gold. Get the referrals, go back, make sure that the leads that you are attracting, you're converting more of them over time, or even right off the start. And then last, now let's focus on how we're going to attract more leads. Because now when I get them, they're going to zip right through, and I'm going to get more money out of every single one that goes through that process. Make sense?
Makes sense.
Any questions? I probably have 4 minutes left. So here's your job. Hi. Oh, fun. Systematize and optimize all of those functions and in this order. So feedback and metrics, then you've got fulfillment, then you got customer development, conversion, and attraction. But just do one at a time. It's very difficult to do all of them unless you had a huge team. You're a big corporation, you got a department for each of them, and you have, you know, deep pockets. And well, in time's more valuable than money a lot of times. And so you want to figure out where your weakest link is and start there and start improving that. All right. So that's the Build It to Grow program. You've got 2 steps, or that's the concept behind what we teach and what we do inside that program. So we just take it, we break it down month to month. So there's 2 things. You can stay the course. If nothing's broken, then that's great. You don't want to fix what's not broken. So just stay the course, keep doing what you're doing, take some of this information and you kind of, you know, apply it and get better at what you do, or you learn and you do something different. So we talked about trial and error, we talked about learning from someone else, and that's what the Build It to Grow program is about. It is about learning from someone else and also through your peer support. So as I talked about before, you had those steps right there. It's focused, it's step by step, it's support and accountability. And I was telling, I think I was talking to you, I was telling someone before. So I took about 2 years to develop all the material and the content for the program. It's a 15-step program. And then I've been spending the last 2 years getting it all cloud-based. That allows you as an entrepreneur to go and review the material and study it and watch the videos on your time. Because 9 to 5 is the most craziest time of day for most people, right? So I am a night owl. Who else was the night owl? You, right? Yeah. I'm a night owl. I'm up working at 2 a lot. I have to make myself go to bed. But I will watch a video at 2, but at 3 in the afternoon may not be a good time for me. So I want to be able to watch it on a Saturday afternoon or or at 2 o'clock on a Monday night or something like that, okay? Community-based, and there's 15 modules. I can go through some more of this, but since we have a couple of minutes, if you guys have any questions, I wanna make sure I field some of those first. So, anybody? No? I got through
Could
it.
you put
We did
that
good.
slide up again?
Which one would you like?
The very first one.
The phone number?
Yes,
Yeah.
actually, let me zip through, because this is just kind of going through the concept behind the program. It's organized, it's managed for growth, it creates your growth engine, you'll drive growth. So, there's the monthly lessons, there's exercise, so it's not just information, there's actually tangible things. There's work packets, there's things to do, there's putting it into practice. This is what you do in your business this month for this concept, do it now. And then there's tools and resources saying, hey, this is what you need, this is what you do. We vet all that, so it saves you guys so much time, okay? And support and accountability, the meetings, I'm gonna zip through and get to that slide because it's up there, and online moderated. So here is the URL for the program info if you guys wanna check it out. But again, if you guys want a copy of these slides, just text BITG to that cell number. And if you guys want me to send you more information on the program, just text more to that number after you've texted BI2G first, then text the word more, because we're gonna start a new group in November, and I'm gonna do some exclusive offers just to people who have expressed interest in this. So if you guys wanna be the first to just get some info on that, those exclusive offers, I'd be happy to send that to you, but just send me that word more and I'll know that you want some. All right, so that is it. Did I do okay?
You did good.
Awesome, thank
One
you.
minute.
Thank you for letting me
Awesome.
speak.